Hi, I'm Nick Skapiak, Senior Director for Global Intelligence at Illume Global Intelligence. Thank you for joining me today. Take a look at the headlines on screen. These were all taken from major news sources and cover disruptive events that happened over the past 4 years. For global companies, or companies looking to expand internationally, these headlines are harrowing. At best, the events behind these headlines could lead to disruption to business operations. At worst, they could lead to a loss of life. Unfortunately, these are just a fraction of the hurdles businesses must overcome to successfully navigate an increasingly chaotic global marketplace. Global companies must deal with rapidly changing conditions in the countries they're doing business. While global politics and security have always been temperamental, the 24-hour news cycle brings these events to our screens immediately, leaving shareholders and partners worried and looking for answers. Government policy is one arena that global businesses need to be mindful of. For example, the recent declaration of a forthcoming review of mining policies by Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull could have significant implications on the price of zinc, a mineral used extensively in galvanizing metals used in manufacturing and construction. It's easy to see then how this seemingly isolated policy change could have a ripple effect across multiple industries and countries. Furthermore, what a government says can have as much influence as what it does. Words spoken by a country's leader give foreign audiences the impression that where a company is headquartered dictates its corporate worldview. When the President of the United States tweets ideas and concepts decidedly pro-America, American companies doing business in other countries are grouped with the statement, regardless of their views. Similarly, when government statements supporting British businesses in the ongoing Brexit negotiations are made, UK businesses are likely viewed as sharing a UK-first perspective. Navigating this chaos requires a plan that isn't simply hiring a crisis management or PR firm to deal with the fallout. This is where developing a corporate foreign policy can help. I'll start with a definition of foreign policy. In their book, Foreign Policy Analysis, A Toolbox, authors Jean-Frédéric Morin and Jonathan Paquin define foreign policy as a set of actions or rules governing an independent political authority deployed in the international environment. Building on this, in a 2002 speech, former Undersecretary of Treasury for International Affairs John B. Taylor identified a nation's foreign policy as having three main components: an economic component, a political component, and a military component. Using Morin, Paquin, and Taylor as a foundation, we developed our concept of corporate foreign policy, which we define as a comprehensive outline of the tactics and vision a private business will use when operating internationally. Furthermore, a corporate foreign policy has three main components: economic intelligence, corporate diplomacy, and risk assessment. The remaining discussion will further define these components. Advanced knowledge of a country's unique economic environment is a key component of corporate foreign policy. This is more than knowledge of how a product or service will perform in a market. This is a foundational understanding of what drives an economy. So how do you determine this? A good place to start is by looking at the country's top export markets. One resource is the United Nations International Trade Statistics Database. Let's go back down under and use Australia as an example. The Australian economy is largely focused on mining and other extractive industries, and, as such, will be driven by changes to these industries. When demand is down, policymakers may be looking for policy alternatives that will either jumpstart these industries or find a different revenue source. Building on this, knowing how a country has reacted in the past to downturns is a helpful exercise. This will, at a minimum, give you a baseline to predict how they may react. A word of caution though, historical analogs are imperfect alone. Just because a country acted one way in the past is not a predictor of future behavior. Present conditions must be considered. An analysis of political leadership is also a helpful exercise. Knowing how a governing party or coalition feels about it in a given industry can help to understand an economy and where it might be going. For example, when New Zealand's Liberal Party came to power last year, it did so promising an end to oil exploration. Armed with this knowledge, an agile global player could make decisions based on how this policy change will affect New Zealand's economy. Finding this information involves first identifying the country's political parties and then monitoring their respective platforms on foreign direct investment and foreign trade. Corporate diplomacy is about how and to whom your company presents itself. Crafting a message that is appropriate for a given country involves understanding the history of relations between the two countries. For example, a firm headquartered in France or the United States looking to take advantage of favorable manufacturing conditions in Vietnam will need to present itself differently than a German firm of similar makeup. While there are plenty of history sources on the internet, I recommend starting with the CIA World Factbook, which features, amongst other information, concise histories of nearly every country recognized by the United Nations. Corporate diplomacy is also about communication. Good messaging promotes trust, something that is increasingly eroding across the globe. This fact is supported by the results of the 2018 Edelman Trust Barometer. In the latest version, only 52% of individuals 18 plus felt they could trust businesses. Moreover, companies headquartered in the world's biggest markets, including the United States, United Kingdom, South Korea, and Germany, saw their trust levels decline from 2017. Fighting through this declining trust is one more thing companies must do to keep their brands relevant in the global marketplace. Corporate diplomacy also means working with allies to get your message across. This involves identifying the non-governmental organizations and government divisions that exist to help businesses develop in their countries. While there is no comprehensive database for these organizations readily available, I suggest looking for a branch of your country's Chamber of Commerce in your country of choice. Moreover, many countries have an international trade office that can be found at their official government page. Keep in mind, however, that both examples seek to promote trade and will not offer the most objective information. Good diplomacy also means knowing who not to talk to and what not to do. Nothing tarnishes a business's image in a country than a corruption scandal. To identify the likelihood of this happening, start with Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. This will give you a baseline from where you can craft ethical responses should a challenging situation present itself. Keeping your company safe means identifying all the risks inherent to a given country. As the final component of corporate foreign policy, risk assessment means identifying all the potential threats to your company's assets and personnel. At AGI, we identify 7 distinct risk categories: geopolitical, economic, security, political, environmental, legal, and logistics. While each of these categories have their own distinct sources, broadly speaking, we look at historic events, trends, and current situations to rank each country's risk level by category. When your company is aware of the risks, you're able to make informed decisions on where to expand or when to move. We also pinpoint risks intrinsic to each country. For example, knowing that New Zealand has a high environmental risk helps companies to develop their contingency plans for their personnel and inventory in the event of a natural disaster. Alternatively, gauging the geopolitical risk for Georgia can help a company identify incidents that would presage another conflict with Russia, like the brief 2008 war between both countries. The global marketplace will always be turbulent, but a comprehensive corporate foreign policy will help you to minimize disruptions to your business operations. Let's take another look at the headlines from the beginning of the presentation. In each situation, a well-defined corporate foreign policy would have minimized the impact on companies working in these countries and sectors. If you operate internationally, it is likely that there will be an incident that will challenge your business. Committing your company to developing a corporate foreign policy will help your company act and not just react when faced with global challenges. Thank you for your time.